You heard in that reading that both of these men that are talked about were hardworking. And they were both going to church, at least in the rudimentary form that church existed back then. And they even both gave an offering to God. But we learned there that one of those offerings was accepted with great joy by God, and one was rejected. So what was the difference between these men? What was the difference between their offerings? And then what was it that caused one of them to be so jealous and hurt and angry that he actually turned against his brother and killed him? Those are the questions we're going to set out to answer today as we continue this His Story series. As you know, if you've been around, that we've been going through these first 4 chapters of Genesis, and we're seeing there how history and God's story has gone from good to bad because of sin. Adam and Eve now have a family, and sin has entered into their lives, and we see it rear its ugly head as relationships become broken and ruined. And here in this story about Cain and Abel, then, we really can tie up the history of the world in a little nutshell, because this same story plays itself out over and over and over again. We see both the potency that sin has, but we also see the subtlety of sin. So to understand the differences between Cain and Abel and to get some insights for our lives, an understanding of sin's potency is a good place to start. And in thinking about sin being potent, I got to thinking about that Dateline NBC special that you've probably caught glimpses of from time to time, To Catch a Predator. To Catch a Predator. You know, you learn through that show, and it's quite frightening, that there are these men, usually, and they're predators, really, who go and prey on unsuspecting young girls, and they get into inappropriate relationships with them. And I hate to be so explicit about it, but when they find someone who's just not aware of what's going on around them, and they're naive, and they're an easy target, they just swoop in and they attack. Now, it's very hard to get a unanimous vote on anything nowadays, but I'm pretty confident that if I were to say that these men should be locked up and that they should be kept away from children forever, there's really no one in here who's going to dare disagree with me about that. We're horrified by things like this. And we shake our heads in disbelief when we even find out that it happens. And we would exhort the proper authorities, the police, and whoever else is necessary to stop it, to do whatever they have to do to protect those kids. And that makes sense. But I want you to remember that for just a few moments, because it's going to apply to us. See, today in this story about Cain and Abel, God tells Cain that sin is crouching at his door, that this sin is lurking like a predator. You know, elsewhere in the Bible, we're told that Satan is like a roaring lion who's just seeking to devour us. And so God tells Cain that he needs to master this sin. He needs to lock it up and throw it away. He can't be so foolish that he would make himself vulnerable for an attack. But we see here that Cain doesn't take the warning. He doesn't protect himself. He leaves himself open. He becomes easy prey. Could the same be true about our lives? I think an honest look would say yes. You see, it's very easy to recognize certain sins, to be sure. For instance, we root for predators to be caught and for children to be saved. That's something that most people agree on. But we're told in the Bible that we're the children of God, and that our Father in heaven desires that we be safe. Yet we so often fail to recognize the danger in our lives in the form of the sin that is crouching at our door, just ready to attack us and have us. What that means quite often is that the thing that is most dangerous in our lives is probably the thing that we are least willing to admit is a problem. And here's how it looks. For instance, you have women who are obsessive about their looks and their self-image and how they appear to others. And yet, they call it good grooming or taking care of themselves. Many men are workaholics to the extent that they neglect their other responsibilities, and especially their family, but they brush it off as ambition and doing what they have to do. Parents, they go and sign their kids up for activity after activity after activity after activity. And then they call it helping them to be well-rounded. Gossip is explained away a lot as just venting. And internet addiction for some is mere social networking. Another thing that you'll find in that same vein is the stuff that you are often most critical about in others might just be, if you're not careful, the thing that's the biggest problem in your lives. But it's hard to admit that. I see it play out all the time. The most judgmental people that I run across are the people who are always telling others to stop being judgmental. And then there are those who talk about not being intolerant. And they are completely intolerant of any views other than their own. That's how sin is predatory. It doesn't present itself as a danger to us. We can recognize it when it's going on in other people's lives for the most part and kind of shake our heads in self-righteousness. But when we're caught up in it, it seems very small and harmless. That's what the lion does. It lurks. And it's just seeking to get you into its grasp and never let go. And this is how it plays out. That internet addict, he didn't start with all-night forays into illicit chat rooms or images that aren't healthy. It started with one